Unleashing the Wild Witch, Chapter 3, Jane. Rain pounded against the roof and the windows as I nervously listened to the creaking noises the old building made. A particularly bright flash of lightning managed to light up the bar through the closed curtains, and the roll of thunder followed almost immediately, rattling the windows. Yep, it was autumn again, the season of freak storms. The small bells on the door jingled as it swung open, allowing the next group of customers to enter, huddled inside their cloaks. The wind and rain rushed into the room almost horizontally, until the door closed with a solid thud. I greeted the newcomers with a friendly nod as they headed for one of the tables, leaving behind a trail of soaked footprints on the wooden floor. I retrieved my notebook and pencil and then made my way to their table. I tried not to wrinkle my nose as the smell of wet dogs wafted my way. There was no mistake that these were werewolves. The three figures turned their beastly heads towards me, raindrops running off their fur, and I responded with my warmest smile. "What can I get you, three?" I had to raise my voice considerably to be audible over the relentless rain pelting the roof. I always wondered why some of them chose to remain in their beastly form rather than shift into their human form. Perhaps they felt more powerful this way? The largest of the three rotated its elongated snout and spoke in a gruff yet astonishingly polite voice. It never ceased to amaze me how they could speak in their animalistic form. "3 ales, please." I returned to the counter and retrieved the mugs from the ornate wooden cabinet. Ned hadn't shown up today, and I hoped I wouldn't need his assistance. Maybe he was ill, or he might just have other things to do. Either way, I had to handle the bar alone tonight, something that made my stomach churn with nerves. I shook my head. Larry refused to hire an official bouncer. He didn't take my concerns serious. I just hoped the patrons would behave themselves today. I heard the door opening once more, and as I turned around, a powerful gust of wind hit me. My eyes were immediately drawn to the figure standing in the doorway, clutching the doorframe and draped in a thick cloak. Lightning struck, casting his silhouette in a dark and ominous relief against the storm. When our eyes met, I froze, and a weird sense of longing came over me. His eyes were the most intense violet color I had ever seen, and I felt strangely drawn to him. We stared at each other, somehow both struck with inexplicable feelings, until the stranger finally managed to pull his gaze away, leaving an empty feeling in my heart. With a graceful motion, the figure closed the door as he stepped inside. I could see drops falling from his cloak, forming small puddles on the floor. I found myself so captivated by the broad, enigmatic figure that I failed to notice the mug of ale was overflowing until it spilled all over my hands. The cold liquid soaked the sleeves of my shirt and foam covered my hands. Uttering a quiet curse under my breath, I hastily snatched a towel from the shelf and wiped the ale from my hands and the counter. Swiftly, I delivered the mugs to the werewolves, who were engrossed in an animated conversation, their gruff laughter piercing through the thunder. Out of the corner of my eye, I observed the mysterious figure removing his dripping cloak before settling at one of the tables in the corner. His outfit was quite elegant, a white shirt with white sleeves spanning his broad chest and expensive black trousers underneath. He looked somewhat out of place in the Blinking Star. The bar usually had rowdier patrons. I approached him, a strange tingle in my stomach. "Good evening, what can I get you?" Now that he wasn't wrapped up in his cloak anymore, I could see his long silver hair that reached beyond his shoulders. The strands were shiny and smooth. He raised his stunning violet eyes to me, and for a moment I held my breath as a strange feeling made its way into my heart. "How about you bring me a red wine?" His baritone voice resonated pleasantly within my chest as he held my gaze for a bit longer than appropriate. "Breathe," he said, with a knowing smirk on his face. I felt a blush creep up my cheeks as I averted my gaze and muttered a meek apology. Trying to shake off my nerves, I hurried back to the counter. Who would order a red wine? Did he think this was a five-star restaurant? He certainly didn't come to this part of the city often. However, I should have one bottle stashed away somewhere, so he was in luck. As I bent over to retrieve the bottle from the lowest shelf in the cabinet, searing hot pain suddenly shot through my body. I sank to my knees behind the counter. Luckily, no one could see my back here. The lump on my side was causing problems again. It was the worst it had ever hurt, sending waves of shivers and nausea coursing through my body. Please let it stop, I prayed, thinking about the customers who might soon wonder where I'd gone. I took a couple of deep breaths. This curse was starting to really affect my daily life. If only there was something I could do about it. Unfortunately, I hadn't found a solution yet, and considering the taboo on the subject, I couldn't exactly approach people and ask them. A wizard might know the answer, or the head witch, but I wasn't ready to mingle with that lot. Somehow, I had the feeling I soon would be forced to seek out their help anyway, seeing as this wasn't going to stop on its own. Finally, the pain subsided just enough for me to regain my composure. Suppressing a wave of nausea, I poured the wine into a tall glass, determined to appear as normal as possible. As I approached the silver-haired man, I noticed that he was studying me intently. His unusual violet eyes pierced right through me. A pang of anxiety gripped me. Did he suspect something? It was bad enough that some of the students still remembered me from years ago. Maybe I attracted the attention of the council? Maybe the stranger was an agent of the tower? There was no way to know. The best I could do was act as normal as possible. I made an effort to walk with confidence while forcing a fake smile onto my face. However, his gaze remained fixed on me, even as I placed a glass of wine in front of him. Flustered, I searched for something to say. Nice weather you brought with you, I chuckled, attempting to break the awkward spell he seemed to have cast over me. A smile finally broke through on his face, reaching his eyes. For a moment, I was utterly captivated, and I momentarily forgot about the throbbing pain and the fear of being caught. Ah, am I the one responsible for this unsightly weather? And here I thought you might have put a curse on me, forcing me to seek shelter in your radiant presence, he said playfully, mischief dancing in his eyes. I was certain he meant it as a joke, but as soon as the word curse escaped his lips, my face drained of color. I'm sorry, I stammered. I have other customers to attend to. Have a pleasant evening. With that, I turned away and hurried back to the counter. My heart drummed in my ears, and I desperately tried to convince myself it was just a coincidence. From the corner of my eye, I sneaked a glance at the stranger. He was still watching me, his brooding eyes strangely concerned. In an attempt to divert my attention, I swiftly busied myself with cleaning the counter, hoping he hadn't noticed me stealing glances at him. The whole situation was fraying my nerves, and I felt increasingly irritated. Why did I have such a reaction to the stranger? Yes, he was handsome, but for all I knew, he could be a total bastard. Plus, he was certainly suspicious, and besides, I couldn't have anyone close to me anyway, not with this curse. The three werewolves whistled at me. Right, they probably wanted to order something. However, the lump on my side started to hurt again, and I motioned at the werewolves that I'd be right there. Holding my side, I stumbled to the back door. I desperately needed some fresh air. As I opened the back door, the wind and rain whipped into my face, and I doubled over. Fortunately, there was a small roof I could stand under, preventing me from getting immediately soaked. God, this curse! Why did it hurt so much? I got the feeling it got worse every day now. I took a few deep breaths until the pain subsided, allowing me to straighten up again. The fresh air did wonders, as I soon felt ready to get back to work again. Just as I was about to head back inside the bar, a massive figure emerged from the back door. It was one of the werewolves. "I'm sorry, but this door is for employees only." I attempted to shoo him back inside, but he stood his ground, his imposing figure towering over me in his beastly form. Hints of fur peeked out from beneath his red and white lumberjack shirt. Crossing his muscled arms, he grinned at me, his lips curling slightly to reveal his sharp teeth. "I thought you might need some help, miss." His gruff voice held anything but politeness, a dangerous undertone sending a shiver down my spine. This didn't bode well at all. Involuntarily, I took a step backward, unfortunately ending up in the rain that immediately soaked me, cold droplets running down my neck. "Thank you for your concern, but I would like to go inside now." I tried to convey calm superiority and crossed my arms, hoping that he would take the hint. However, he seemed to have other intentions as he unfolded his arms and flexed his claws. "Well, honey, I might have other plans." He let out a low growl that made the hairs in my neck stand on end, and the werewolf meant business. He stepped forward, forcing me to back up even more until I hit the fence with a thud. "Now, if you would be a good little bitch, this will be over in no time," he snarled with a growl. He jumped at me and pushed me painfully against the wooden fence. Air was forced out of me on impact, and fear made my heart pound in my ears. I tried to push him away, putting my hands on his chest, but it was as if I was trying to push a brick wall. "Let me go!" I screamed, but my voice sounded shaky, and fear coursed through me as his iron grip kept me in place. Frantically, I clawed at his hairy arm, trying to peel his nails away that dug painfully into my shoulder. Adrenaline made my ears ring, and my vision darkened as a course of dizziness made my legs tremble. I knew all too well what he was going to do to me. With one claw, he groped at my breasts underneath my black shirt, painfully squeezing them. He panted in my ear, his breathing quickening from arousal, his foul breath making me nauseous, and I felt his long, hot tongue glide along my neck, lapping at my earlobe. Oh God, how was I to stop him? I tried to kick him, but he was standing too close for me to even lift my knee. Then, suddenly, he let go of me, and I almost fell to the ground. His arms went limp at his sides, and a questioning look appeared on his snout. "Step away from the lady, please." The baritone voice made me look up. Behind the werewolf stood the stranger, his violet eyes piercing into my gaze as he gave me a reassuring nod. The werewolf grunted as if he were fighting something before stepping away from me, his yellow eyes glowing. Now I had a better view of the stranger, and as he lifted his arm, I could swear there was a blue light coming from his fingertips. "Good boy," he said, as if praising a dog. "Now go home and do not return here." He stared the werewolf straight into his eyes, something one just didn't do with werewolves unless you had a certain death wish. For a moment, I could see the silent battle going on between them, and I feared the werewolf might attack. However, the werewolf seemed to shrink a little under the stranger's gaze before turning around and stumping through the back door, shaking the water off his fur. I stared at the silver-haired stranger with an open mouth. How did he do that? No one could command a werewolf, but he somehow did it. I watched as he stepped forward and extended his elegant hand. Rain immediately soaked his white shirt, but he didn't seem to be bothered by that. His eyes softened as I finally put my hand in his, a jolt of electricity coursing through my arm, making me gasp in surprise. "That's my girl. Let's get you back inside." His voice was soothing and stirred something deep inside me, erasing the fear and enveloping me in a calming warmth. What was wrong with me? This was a stranger. I didn't know one thing about him. As I stepped forward, he put his arm around my shoulders as if to protect me from the weather and guided me back inside. His spicy scent enveloped me, making him even more mysterious. What man smelled like smoky wood and cinnamon? Thank you, I stammered as I sat down on the wooden kitchen chair. I was soaked, my red curls sticking to my face. A fine sight I must be, I thought wryly. The adrenaline slowly subsided, and I let out a deep breath. That was one hell of a scare. I almost got raped. I tried not to think about the things he could have done to me, but somehow the gruesome images were hard to stop. A shiver ran down my spine. The stranger leaned against the kitchen table, his eyes concerned. Droplets ran from his silvery hair onto his broad shoulders and the table. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. "I guess." I was trying to get my voice to sound steady. I better get back in there before the customers wreak havoc," I chuckled, hoping to sound okay. There was no need for him to be worried about me. I had survived a lot already, and something told me I would be over this soon enough. His gaze was skeptical. He didn't believe me one bit. But he quickly regained his composure and laughed at me. "Right, let's get back in there. I am Mason, by the way," and he offered me his hand. "Jane," I replied as I shook his hand, which felt strangely good. He followed me back to the bar, his presence somehow giving me a warm feeling inside. Strange how some people have that effect on you. I guess life throws some weird stuff at me.